Hello everyone, it's Maddie and welcome back to my channel. In this video, we're going to be discussing an extremely heartbreaking and unfortunate case. This case today is a solved case. But before we get into it, I want to put a disclaimer that I mean no disrespect to anybody that I talk about in this case. This is all just information that I have found on the internet, and I've collated into this video today to bring awareness to the victim as well as bring awareness to the justice system that failed her. And on that note, let's jump straight into the case. Gillian McEwen, most commonly known as Jill, was born on October 30th, 1982 in Ireland to her parents Edith and George McEwen. 3 years later, her younger brother Michael was born. In 1990, when Jill was 7 and her brother was 4, her family first moved to Australia as her father was appointed to a job in Perth. Upon moving to Australia, she attended an Australian primary school and high school before moving back to Ireland in 1996. Back in Ireland, she continued her studies before graduating with a Bachelor of Arts degree from the University College Dublin. After she graduated, she worked for an Irish national broadcaster. At the age of 19, Jill met Tom Meagher and they fell in love. They married in July 2008, and this is when Jill McEwen became formally known as Jill Meagher. Tom described his wife as full of love, compassion, laughter, and a force of energy that was literally breathtaking. In 2009, Jill officially moved to Australia with her husband Tom, and they chose Melbourne as the best fit for their lifestyle, jobs, and future plans. Upon moving to Melbourne, Jill started working for the Australian Broadcasting Corporation, more commonly known in Australia as the ABC. She did administrative work there as well as the occasional on-air role. Around this same time, Jill's parents and her brother also moved back to Perth, and she kept in contact with them regularly. September 21st, 2012 was a Friday night, and as most people do, Jill went and had some drinks after work with her co-workers from ABC. She was 29 years old at the time, and she also invited her husband along as well, but he said he wasn't too keen and he told Jill, go have fun with your friends. First, the group went to the Brunswick Green Bar on Sydney Road in Brunswick, Melbourne. After a few drinks, they moved onto another bar on the same street, which was known as Bar Etiquette at the time. At around 1:30 a.m. in the early hours of Saturday morning, which was the 22nd of September 2012, Jill decided to leave the bar and walk home. Jill's friend was also leaving at the same time, and she offered Jill a ride home in the taxi she was taking, but Jill insisted that she was fine to walk because she only lived 700 meters down the road. Jill lived with her husband in Lux Way, which was only a 10-minute walk away from the bar that they were at. So Jill took off and started her very short walk home. At the time, she was wearing a black coat as well as high heels. At 1:34 a.m., CCTV footage caught Jill walking past the Chemist Warehouse, and she stopped and talked to 3 passerbys. She seemed to know these people as she stopped and had a chat with them, and she also embraced the woman. Then 2 minutes later at 1:36 a.m, CCTV footage caught Jill walking past Crust Pizza. She seemed to be walking at a reasonable pace, not super quick, but like she had somewhere to be. 6 minutes later at 1:42 a.m, footage from a bridal shop called Duchess Boutique on Sydney Road showed Jill through the window. This footage was a bit limited in what you could see because the footage was taken from inside the bridal shop, like going out onto the street through the window. So you could still see the street, but like it wasn't super clear. The footage showed Jill speaking to an unidentified male in a blue hoodie at around 1:42 a.m. on Saturday morning, and this was around 10 minutes after she had left the bar. This was the last known time that Jill was captured on any CCTV footage. I also think it's important to note that 4 minutes earlier at 1:38 a.m, the same man had been seen on the same footage walking outside the shop. This bridal shop was less than 400 meters from Jill's home. At around 2 a.m, Jill's husband woke up and he noticed that Jill wasn't home yet. He tried texting and calling Jill, trying to get a hold of her and find out where she was, but she wasn't answering him, and so he got really worried. By 4 a.m, he got so worried that he actually got up and left his home on Lux Way and started walking through the streets around his house trying to find Jill. At 6 a.m, after calling Jill over 80 times, as well as trying to find her around the streets, he went to the police and he officially reported Jill missing. In the days following Jill's disappearance, her friends, family, and work colleagues used social media to try and find Jill. Posts were made to Twitter to try and bring awareness to Jill's disappearance. A Facebook page called Help Us Find Jill Meagher was also started on Sunday the 23rd of September in hopes of finding Jill alive. Within 5 days, this Facebook page received over 100,000 likes. At 3:15 p.m. on Sunday, the day after Jill was reported missing, police put a call out to the public for anyone with any information around Jill's disappearance to come forward. A poster campaign was also started in the days after her disappearance. Through all these efforts, Jill Meagher's name started to become quite well known around Melbourne. There was an awareness around her disappearance amongst the public, and media reports regarding her disappearance started to grow. At 6:30 a.m. on Monday the 24th of September 2012, 2 days after Jill was reported missing, her handbag was found by police in a laneway near Hope Street in Brunswick, which was quite close to where she lived at the time. However, the discovery of her handbag was a bit baffling to police, as they already searched that area and her bag definitely wasn't there when they originally searched. Police didn't really understand how her handbag ended up there, and they believed that it must have been planted. By 9 a.m. on Monday, the homicide squad had taken over the case, which is just crazy as she went missing on Saturday, and then by Monday the homicide squad had taken over a case, and I imagine this would have been really hard for her family to find out. By 2 p.m. on Monday, forensic officers had recovered evidence from a laneway, but they didn't specify what this evidence was, but then they went and questioned Jill's husband, Tom. Police originally zeroed in on Tom, which is kind of understandable in a way, because in nearly 1/3 of murder cases, the victim is murdered by an intimate partner. But at the same time, this is obviously so sad, as Tom's wife was missing and he was so worried about her welfare, and then the police were suspecting him. A leading homicide detective on the case, David Butler, has since made the following statement when referring to their treatment of Tom, and I'm just going to read it to you guys now. When you think about it down the track, you're thinking, geez, we were pretty awful for the way we've treated this poor guy. Not only has he lost his wife, but now he's been treated pretty badly by us in some respects. Jill's husband Tom was willingly in the media spotlight when Jill went missing, appealing for the public's assistance for any information. He did this despite the police treating him like a person of interest, because he was so desperate to get Jill home. On Thursday, police went to Jill and Tom's home, and they took away some items for testing, including their car. That same day, police also released footage of Jill and the man in the blue hoodie interacting outside the bridal shop to the public. By Thursday evening, police undertook a second search of Jill's place, and more items were taken away for testing. At around 2:30 p.m. on Thursday, September 27th, 2012, police went to a Coburg address and arrested a 41-year-old male known as Adrian Bailey. Phone tracking was extremely crucial in linking Adrian to Jill's disappearance. It was found that Adrian's car went through a toll road transaction on Moorland Road at the exact same time that Jill's phone was also passing through the same route. Investigators said that this is what initially drew their attention to Adrian and stopped them from looking into other leads, including Jill's husband. From there, police used tracking to trace both Adrian and Jill's phone that morning and found that they had taken the exact same route. They both travelled from Brunswick to the Tullamarine Freeway before reaching Gisborne, which is about a 50-kilometre drive and takes around 40 minutes. After arresting Adrian, police searched his house. Adrian's girlfriend actually found a broken SIM card in the bottom of the washing machine after washing Adrian's clothes, and she gave it to police. Police did a bit of research and they discovered that the SIM card belonged to Jill Meagher. Upon his arrest, Adrian was extensively questioned by police. It was eventually confirmed through all the questioning that he was the man in the blue hoodie seen in the footage with Jill outside the bridal shop. Police reported that Adrian seemed pretty confident when they started questioning, and he was pretty relaxed. He claimed that he spent that Friday night in the city with his girlfriend, but they had an argument and she took off. According to him, he then spent 2 hours in the city looking for her before he decided to go home. And I'm about to read a statement to you guys that Adrian said to police, which is just completely baffling to me and I just really don't understand it. But anyways, he said, "I'm worried about women. Women shouldn't walk around on their own." Which is just so crazy, you guys. Like, this man has been arrested in relation to a woman's disappearance, and he's saying that he's worried about women. Like, if people like Adrian didn't exist, then people like Jill wouldn't have to worry about her own safety. So at some point in the questioning, police presented Adrian with a picture of his car's location that night, and it didn't add up to the story that he was telling police. Police also presented Adrian with information that they had around Adrian's phone's locations that night and early hours into the Saturday morning, and this is when Adrian's demeanor began to change. His confidence started to fade as he realized that police had a lot more information on him that night than he realized, and he started to answer all the questions with, "I can't explain it." At some point in the questioning, he even started to get angry. Police also disclosed to Adrian that they had found Jill's SIM card in his home, and when they questioned him why he had it, he said, "I don't want to explain it." I'm also now just going to go through some more information that police had on Adrian from the night of Jill's disappearance that I haven't touched on yet. At 7:28 p.m, Adrian was caught on CCTV footage entering the Quiet Man Irish pub with his girlfriend. After leaving the venue, they then moved on to a laid-back club called Lounge. The pair then allegedly had an argument about Adrian's possessiveness, and this is when Adrian's girlfriend left. At 12:24 a.m, footage from Lounge also caught Adrian pacing up and down, appearing agitated. It looked like he was trying to call someone on his phone, which we can assume was probably his girlfriend, and she wasn't answering, and this was causing him to be quite angry. It is then reported that Adrian left, and this is when he went back to his home in Coburg, put on a blue hoodie, and then headed back into the city to Sydney Road in Brunswick. He was then placed outside the bridal shop on Sydney Road at 1:42 a.m. as caught on the CCTV footage. In this footage, he was seen talking to Jill before Jill left and continued on her way home. But after this interaction, Adrian actually followed her. Jill turned down Hope Street, but soon after making this turn, Adrian grabbed her. He pulled her into a laneway which doesn't actually have a name, but it was off Hope Street. During the questioning, Adrian eventually admitted to murdering Jill. He claimed that he originally stopped just to talk to her because she looked lost and he wanted to help her. He said that she flipped me off and that made me angry. This is so ridiculous, but he told police that he hadn't planned on hurting Jill. He just planned on raping her, which is, I don't understand how that's not the same thing. However, Jill was a very strong person, and so she resisted and she fought back, and she told Adrian that she was going to call the police, and these actions are what Adrian said caused him to murder her. He told police, "I was trying to be nice and she kept going from being nasty to nice, and it just ended up in the alley. There's no excuse." After he murdered Jill in the unnamed laneway, he reportedly left her body there, went home and got a shovel, and returned to the laneway at 4:22 a.m. He then placed Jill's body in the boot of his car and left the scene at 4:25 a.m. He then drove her body out to a location in Gisborne, which is 50 kilometers away from where he murdered her, and this is where he buried her. After confessing, Adrian told the detective, "I'm going to jail for a long time. I hope they bring back the death penalty before I get sentenced. I have no life left. They should have the death penalty for people like me. How many chances does a person need? They should never have let me out." On the same day that Adrian was arrested and confessed to murdering Jill, at around 10 p.m, he led police to where Jill's body was buried. Police, however, did spend 2 hours in the car with Adrian, as he wasn't 100% sure of the exact location of where he buried her, so he took quite some time to find her. After 2 hours, her body was located in a shallow grave on Black Hill Road near Gisborne South. It was discovered that she had been raped and strangled by Adrian. She was found with hemorrhages and bruising in her neck, as well as bleeding in her neck muscles. It requires great force to cause these types of injuries. Around 4 hours later at 2 a.m. on Friday the 28th of September, Adrian was officially charged with the rape and murder of Jill Meagher. But who was Adrian Bailey? Adrian was the eldest of 5 siblings, and he had 4 of his own children to 2 different women. In 2012, when Jill was murdered by Adrian, he was actually a notorious sex offender who had a history of rape and violence that dated back more than 2 decades. When he was 19, he raped 2 teenagers in 2 separate incidences, and he also tried to rape another. One of his victims was a 16-year-old family friend. In June 1991, Adrian went to jail for the first time. He served only 22 months, so less than 2 years, of a 5-year sentence. He said he managed to get out over 3 years early because he faked his way through a sex offender program in order to get an early release. He literally knew how to play the system, and so he just went along with the programs he had to follow in order to get an early release. From September in the year 2000 until March 2001, he raped 5 St Kilda sex workers. It was reported that he would trap his victims in his vehicle and then raped them multiple times. In 2002, he was sentenced to 11 years in prison with a minimum of 8 years for the 16 counts of rape against the 5 sex workers. The judge that sentenced him warned that society needed to be protected from him and then made the following statement to Adrian. He said, "You use an array of threats and violence to force your victims to satisfy your gross sexual appetite. You force your victims to accept a series of sexual acts that cause them horrifying distress." However, it's reported that Adrian wasn't sentenced as a serious sex offender, and if he had, he may have received a longer sentence in jail. Some believe that he may have received a lighter sentence because his attacks were on sex workers, and if they had been on women who weren't in the sex industry, he may have received a harsher punishment. Adrian ended up serving only 8 years of his 11-year sentence, and he was released early on parole. In August 2011, while Adrian was on parole, he bashed a 20-year-old man while on a night out in Geelong. The man was left unconscious after the attack and also had a broken jaw. Despite Adrian being charged with the incident, as well as the parole board being informed of this incident, his parole wasn't withdrawn and he was still left free to walk the streets. It is believed that as the attack wasn't a sex crime, it didn't raise clear concerns, and so Adrian was just able to walk free. Then in February 2012, Adrian pleaded guilty to the assault. He was sentenced to only 3 months for this attack, and then he even went on to appeal the sentence, and he was released on parole, free to walk the streets. This whole collection of events is just extremely upsetting and just completely unforgivable. The Victorian Parole Board did not just fail to cancel Adrian's parole after the physical assault, but they also failed Jill, her family, her loved ones, her husband, and everybody else affected by this case. Eventually, on April 5th, 2013, Adrian pleaded guilty to the rape and murder of Jill Meagher. On June the 11th, he appeared in court again for a pre-sentencing hearing. During this hearing, a suppression order was lifted, which allowed Adrian's extensive history of rape and violence to be released to the public, and this generated headlines. Finally, on June 19th, 2013, at the Victorian Supreme Court, Adrian was sentenced to life imprisonment with a non-parole period of 35 years. In September of 2013, Adrian used Victorian legal aid to lodge an appeal against his sentence. He was arguing that his minimum sentence was too long, but his appeal was dismissed. Jill's case was very highly publicised in the media, and as a result, other previous victims who had been assaulted by Adrian in the past came forward. There were hearings that then took place in light of these new accusations. But ultimately, after his sentencing in relation to Jill's case, as well as these additional victims that came forward, he will be eligible for parole in 2055, and he will be 83 years old when he's eligible. Something else that is just so shocking and I really wanted to mention was that before Jill's murder, Adrian's own mother warned authorities about Adrian. On multiple occasions, she tried to tell authorities that Adrian was dangerous. She said, "Let me tell you, I told them I had concerns and nobody listened to me. Nobody. His parole officer didn't listen to me. I went into the city to an office of the justice system. Nobody listened to me." So let's touch on what happened after the public were informed of Jill's murder back in September 2012. So Adrian's arrest, as well as the discovery of Jill's body, generated extensive media coverage. Once the information of Jill's murder was released to the public, people started to place flower bouquets at various locations for Jill. This included the bridal store where the CCTV footage was taken, a church in Brunswick, her home, and where her body was found in Gisborne. Tom, Jill's husband, also made the following statement after Adrian's arrest. He said, "I just wanted to say very briefly that despite the fact that this is the worst thing we'll ever go through in our lives, I've been really humbled by the support of the Australian public, the tireless efforts of the police, and all the friends and family who've put their lives on hold to help us out." Despite police informally considering Tom a suspect at the start of the investigation, he was able to excuse their treatment of him. He knew that it was in the best interest of finding his wife Jill, and that's all that mattered to him. An acting senior sergeant, Sharon Darcy, said he appreciated the work they were doing and held no malice towards the way they had done their job, and that it was amazing in the way that he was able to forgive police. A public police march for Jill was organised by a Melbourne photographer who lived in Brunswick and took place on September 30th, 2012. This march was organised to bring the local community together as well as protest against violence. The organiser expected a few hundred people to attend, but thousands ended up attending and walked along Sydney Road in Brunswick in memory of Jill. The crowd stretched over a kilometre. There was that many people. This march was a massive outpouring of grief, anger and shock. People were holding handmade signs that said things like "No violence" and "Remember Jill Meagher." The march intended to not only bring attention to the murder of Jill, but also the wider concerns about violence against women. Jill's mother thanked the Melbourne community for their support. On October 4th, 2012, a funeral service and cremation was held for Jill at the Melbourne Faulkner Memorial Park. This was a private service and the cemetery was locked for the day, and only those who were invited to the funeral were actually allowed in. At the conclusion of the service, her family released white doves into the air in her honour. A service was also held back in her hometown in Ireland, where it was said that thousands of people attended. In jail, Adrian has spent a lot of time in protective custody as there are concerns that he will be targeted. In 2017, he was actually attacked by one of the other inmates in Barwon prison, and he attacked him with a fork, but Adrian only sustained minor injuries. He is particularly targeted by other inmates as he is seen as the reason that there are stricter policies and procedures around parole release. Jill's husband, Tom Meagher, left Melbourne and returned to his hometown in Ireland. He did briefly visit Australia in November 2014 to promote the White Ribbon Movement, which was a campaign focused on stopping violence against women. On Jill and Tom's 10th wedding anniversary, Tom shared a Facebook post that read, "10 years ago today, I was lucky enough to marry this incredible human." He then went on to describe their wedding day before ending with, "I daydreamed about what we will be doing in 5 years, in 10 years, in 20 or 30 years. We never made it to 5. And he finished off the post by writing, "Thank you for consistently and persistently teaching me how to live, how to think, how to embrace love wholly, and to bear witness to the fire you lit in me and so many others in your short time on this earth. You are loved at every moment of every day." Two forensic investigators who attended the scene of Jill's body were so emotionally damaged by the scene that they actually never returned to work. Sergeant Paul Rowe, a member of the homicide squad who actually questioned Adrian, was so affected by the case that he actually decided to leave the homicide squad. After Jill's murder, the Victorian government admitted that their laws had failed and that change was necessary. The government went on to introduce legislation that ensured that perpetrators that reoffend while on parole either have their parole cancelled or at the very least reassessed. The government really failed Jill and her loved ones. Jill was such a young, beautiful soul and her life was cut short. This was preventable if the right processes had just been in place at the time. Jill could still be here today living her life, and it is just so sad that this opportunity was stripped from her. And that is all the information I have on this case today. I look forward to discussing this with you guys down in the comments, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye guys.